Howdy, friends. For Obscure Cryptid of the Day number 3, I think it's time to talk about Sinkhole Sam. Sinkhole Sam, seen here, is supposedly a giant prehistoric worm or snake-like creature who lives in a pond called the Sinkhole adjacent to Inman Lake near McPherson, Kansas. At an area of only a quarter square mile, Inman Lake is the largest natural lake in Kansas. Kansas itself doesn't have very many lakes, so most of the lakes it does have are man-made reservoirs created by damming rivers and whatnot. Inman Lake used to be part of a larger network of wetlands, but most of it has been destroyed for farming and residency. You can see there's a few houses around the lake. It's actually even grown smaller since the events of this story happened. Sam himself was described as a 15-foot-long snake with a forked tail and a large grin, who is as wide as a car tire. He was supposedly first seen in the 1920s by some unnamed fishermen and then forgotten about for decades. In 1952, two local Mennonite boys named Albert Neufeld and George Rieger spotted the creature while fishing from a bridge. Neufeld shot at it with a .22 rifle and it vanished beneath the waves. As this was during the 1950s cryptid craze, the local paper reported on it and people flocked to Inman Lake to try and see it. Despite this, no photographs actually exist. The story was picked up by a satirist at the Salina Journal in 1952 named Ernest Alva Dewey, who had already poked fun at other cryptids. Dewey claimed to have traveled to the lake with a fictional scientist named Dr. Ernest P. Quittlebaum, who explained that Sam was not a cryptid but a Thupengurkle, a supposed species of ancient subterranean animal which was too dumb to know is extinct. We'll definitely go into this in more detail in a second, because the story gets crazy from here. Today, the sinkhole has dried up, as has a lot of the lake, but this is more what it looked like at the time. So even if there was something there, the habitat that it lived in is no longer there. Locals claim that the creature lives in the caves underground and only came up to the lake to hunt for fish, so it could potentially show up in other Kansas waterways, but it's probably not still in Inman Lake, just because Inman Lake has shrank so much. Theories as to what the boys actually saw that day range from, the usual things for something big they saw in the water. It was either a large catfish or a log or a trick of the waves, but, it's a pond, so it's not likely that it was actually, full-on waves. It is possible they actually saw a large creature in the water. It could have been a large snake. It could have been a big catfish. We don't actually know. But where the story gets really interesting is actually that newspaper article, so let's look back at that for a second. The newspaper article is written by a satirist, Mr. Ernest Alva Dewey, who had poked fun at previous cryptid sightings and UFO sightings and whatnot that were going on in the 50s. So he wrote this as a satire piece, and if you read it, it kind of becomes apparent, but there's just some crazy stuff that's worth looking at in this paper. Science set back years. Monster turns out to be a plain old Flupengurkle. He goes on to say some of my favorite quotes. In the cases of extraneous monsters, the sparser the evidence, the better. Just chasing cryptids, when you have less evidence, it makes for a more fun story. He also said, one reason that the Flupengurkle is so rare is because it is extinct. He goes on to say that the creature went extinct because they were all male, and they were too dumb to actually realize that some of them needed to be female in order to have a breeding population. He also repeatedly notes that Flupengurkles were just absolutely dumb as shit. He says they're primarily vegetarian, but again, they're too stupid to know this, so they may occasionally prey on people, and they illustrated it at the top here with this drawing of... You can't really see it there, I'll have to zoom in on that, but a drawing of Flupengurkle, Sinkhole Sam, pulling a guy off a bridge. So he then goes on to say, there remains the problem of what to do with the monster. My advice is this: nothing. Now that the country has gone Republican, maybe he'll go away. So obviously just a very satirical article, but then I thought it was funny that it then goes into this article here about a very bleak story about the CCP killing Christian missionaries in the ongoing civil war in China that was going on at the time. And then it has this advertisement for a service at the local church. It's just kind of funny how old newspapers worked like that. And this is the actual illustration that was included, which does in fact show a snake-like creature with like a backward shark fin yanking a boy with a rifle off the bridge, which is not by any measure what the boys actually said happened. They said that they shot at it and it disappeared beneath the waves, but it makes for a fun illustration. So today, the sinkhole itself, which is this area here on the edge of the lake, it's mostly dried up. It only fills up during the rainy season, even then only with 2 or 3 feet of muddy water. You can't even really catch fish in it anymore because there's not really the habitat for fish to live in. But supposedly, if the creature lived in the subterranean caverns underground, it could show up in nearby lakes and some of the man-made waterways in Kansas. I just think he's a really fun cryptid. Also, as a note, I could not find anywhere where the name Sinkhole Sam comes from. I kind of assumed it was something that the press came up with, but I couldn't find anything, so I resorted to asking ChatGPT, and this is what ChatGPT said. I normally don't mess with AI like this, by the way, but yeah, it said, it first tried to say it's a lesser-known cryptid from Minnesota, specifically with a body of water called Lake Ochita, near the town of Heron Lake. I looked up. The Heron Lake monster is a completely different cryptid from Sinkhole Sam. It's not the same creature at all, so that just tells you that you cannot trust ChatGPT to actually do its own research. A lot of the other stuff kind of lines up. It got the nickname Sinkhole Sam because of the belief that it might dwell in underwater sinkholes or caverns. That's not entirely true. Well, they do say that it could live in the caves underneath Kansas. The pond that was found was already referred to as the sinkhole by locals before the monster supposedly showed up. So Sam is named after the local fishing hole. It's just where the name Sam came from. It seems to be something that was made up by the press. ChatGPT also notes that it's a common alliterative name also used in folklore to personify mysterious entities, but like I called out my ChatGPT on this. I was like, yeah, no, I can't trust you as a source of information because you thought Sinkhole Sam was in the wrong state. Don't ChatGPT is a language model. It is made to mimic human speech. It is not made to do research for you. Do not trust ChatGPT to do your own research. Turning this cryptid video into a lecture about AI, but it needs to be said sometimes. Do not trust ChatGPT. Anyways, tell me in the comments what y'all think about Sinkhole Sam. I think it's one of those really weird cryptids that you don't really hear about outside of, like, the locality of southern Kansas, northern Oklahoma. It's also somewhat related to the Oklahoma octopus, and other lake monsters throughout the United States, especially in the Midwest for some reason. But I don't know. I think he's kind of a weird, zany creature who's fun to think about. I would like to believe that things like Sinkhole Sam exist. Label me, I want to believe.